I have done a couple of videos about events within the Indian Territory of the 1800s. The subject has become quite interesting to me, so I decided to do another. A little background before I start with the story. The Indian Territory was formed in the 1830s as an unincorporated and unorganized territory in what is today Oklahoma. The U.S. government's policy toward Indians in that time period was called Indian removal, so named as there was a policy to relocate tribes, and the Indian Territory was a key destination for many relocated tribes. An offshoot of this policy came to be known as the Trail of Tears, as tribes were forced to move by foot or wagon to their relocation areas. Thousands of Native Americans lost their lives during the grueling treks, and the era is considered a dark spot in American history. Now on to the Ned Christie story. Ned Christie was a Cherokee Indian born in the Going Snake district of the Indian Territory in 1852. His parents had survived the Trail of Tears to locate there. Ned was elected to the Cherokee National Council in 1885. He was known for his staunch support of Cherokee sovereignty, as a movement was underway to give Indians individual land allotments, thus eliminating the status of tribes as separate nations. The law enforcement in the Indian Territory was controlled out of Fort Smith, Arkansas, by a judicial court run by Isaac Parker, known as the Hanging Judge. Law enforcement officers were deputy U.S. Marshals under the direction of a U.S. Marshal. In May of 1887, Christie was in the town of Tahlequah to attend a meeting of the Cherokee National Council. Also in town was U.S. Deputy Marshal Dan Maples, who was there investigating the growing illegal whiskey operations in the Tahlequah area. He had warrants for two men, Bub Traynor and John Parrish, who were key participants in the illegal whiskey trade. As Deputy Marshal Maples was returning to his wagon camp on a bright moonlight night, he was ambushed, shot in the chest, and died a few hours later. Ned Christie, who had gone on a drinking spree the same night as the shooting, awoke the next morning to learn that he was a suspect in the murder of Deputy Marshal Maples. He hid out near his home in the Rabbit Trap community and remained at large as other deputy marshals were unable to arrest him. In May 1889, 2 years after the murder of Deputy Marshal Maples, a new U.S. Marshal, Jacob Yose, was assigned to run the marshal's office in Fort Smith, and he assigned a new deputy the job of apprehending Ned Christie and offered a $500 reward for completing the task. During late September 1889, Deputy Marshal Heck Thomas and his posse located Ned Christie in his house in the Rabbit Trap area. Thomas shouted for Ned to surrender, but his response was to send a hail of gunfire down onto the men outside. The lawmen set fire to an outbuilding, which then caught the house on fire. One of the deputies had been badly wounded and was losing lots of blood. Thinking that Christie was probably dead, They left to get their wounded comrade to town for medical attention. They then returned to the cabin and learned that both Christie and his son had sustained serious wounds, but both had survived and had been taken into hiding by family and friends. Ned's supporters built him a well-fortified rock fort at the top of a hill, and Deputy Thomas decided to return to Fort Smith without capturing Ned. Thomas felt that more men would be required to successfully assault the rock fort, and he did not want to subject his men to an unlikely desired outcome. For a time, Ned enjoyed a relatively peaceful life as he and his son recovered from their wounds. Along with the help of relatives and neighbors, he built a well-fortified new house. During the summer of 1890, support for Ned diminished as he was blamed for a spate of crimes that were happening in the area. The bounty for the capture and delivery of Ned Christie to Fort Smith was increased to $1,000. Judge Parker and U.S. Marshal Yowes were convinced that Christie would eventually be brought in. 5.5 years after the murder of Deputy Marshal Maples, another posse was formed to complete the task of capturing or killing Ned Christie, and again they were unsuccessful. Only 4 weeks later, yet another large contingent of law officers were sent to accomplish the daunting task of Ned Christie's capture. They surrounded the outlaw's house and demanded his surrender. As might be expected, Ned Christie refused the order of surrender, and a day-long gun battle ensued, with several officers being wounded. During the night, an officer snuck up to the house and placed 12 sticks of dynamite next to the house. At daybreak the next morning, the fuse was lit, and a large explosion destroyed part of the house and set it on fire. Ned appeared out of the smoke and fire, rifle blazing. He was killed in a hail of gunfire, and thus the Ned Christie War ended. The body was taken to Fort Smith, and after expenses, each officer's share of the $1,000 reward was only $74. The truth of Deputy Marshal Maples' murder did not surface until 26 years later. In a story in the Daily Oklahoman, it was revealed that a former slave, Dick Humphrey, adopted into the Cherokee Nation many years earlier, in fact had witnessed the murder. He told how he saw the ne'er-do-well Bub Trainer hide behind a tree and shoot Maples. Ned Christie was lying nearby, drunk and passed out. Humphrey had kept his story to himself all those years for fear of retaliation from Bub Trainer. Even after Trainer's death, Humphrey kept the story quiet because Trainer's gang still operated in the area. The information that Humphrey gave to the newspaper was deemed credible. Consequently, Ned Christie was accused and ultimately killed for a crime he did not commit. Ned Christie certainly was not a saint, and he undoubtedly died with many skeletons in his closet. Today, Christie is held in high regards in the annals of Cherokee history. If you enjoyed this video, give a thumbs up, click on the bell for notification of future videos, and most importantly, subscribe to the channel. As always, thanks for watching.